How are you guys doing? Hello, how are you? You guys? Okay.
Yeah, I think it just makes things rechargeable batteries.
James.
Really?
Trying to get your attention this way.
That's how you get me called St. James.
Hey,
Because I was lost in space. How you doing?
Yeah, the rig.
How's everything from last time I seen you?
Rig's okay.
Yeah. Hold and steady, huh?
Yeah.
That's where it's at.
I think there's kind of like a stomach virus going around it.
Oh, really? Oh, you caught it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So I don't know. I'm usually the healthiest guy.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Yeah, we had a couple of people who went down this week who said they had been sick for 2 years. You know?
Good? Yep.
Okay. I just looked up and realized it was 4. I'm like, oh.
It was.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. And we are going to call the June meeting of the TRAC to order. Do we have anyone here for public comment today? All right. I don't think so. Okay. Our first agenda item would be approving the meeting. Did everyone have a chance to take a look at those? Okay, great. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting? Okay. Second? All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? Who's second? I'm sorry, Sunny seconded. GW is first. First up, we have Shelby Harris presenting the test that we have had some discussion over, and I think it's reaching kind of a finalization.
It is.
Yeah.
It's an action item for you.
Go ahead, do your intro.
Good afternoon. My name is Shelby Harris, and I am the Superintendent of Transportation for PSTA. That's a really fancy title for somebody that's in charge of 385 bus operators, 23 supervisors, and a few people that don't know I'm in charge of. So, I know you're used to Jeff Thompson being here, but he decided that he'd rather be at a Blackhawks game. So that's where he went. And now you're stuck with me. For 34 years, and I started as a bus operator. I drove bus. I was a transportation supervisor for almost 30 years, and the last 4.5 years I have been superintendent of transportation. So now you know a little bit about me. How scary is that? We're going to talk about action items, and I was told I needed to say that. You all would know that this is an action item. And we're going to talk a little bit about the PSTA Customer Code of Conduct. Jeff Thompson did this with you guys in the past, and we've come up with a final draft. I'm going to give a little presentation on what we came up with. And it's just a start. It's a start to help us get things under control, because things are a little bit out of control now, and we really want to get it in control and help our bus drivers out. I love the bus operators, truly. Okay, we're going to do a little clip on behavior on the bus.
Throw your sandwich at the bus driver. Do it, come on. Hey, who threw that?
I'll turn this damn bus around. That'll end your precious little field trip pretty damn.
So, there is chaos. First thing we're going to talk about is consumption or possession of open food and beverages on the bus. We don't want people eating their hamburgers and drinking their Cokes and spilling stuff everywhere, because it leads to other things such as roach infestation, people getting their clothes messed up on their way to work or a job interview. We don't want that. So we want to do what we can to control people eating on the bus. Will it happen? Absolutely. It's going to happen. We can't monitor everything. SWAT is not going to drop down out of the ceiling of the bus and send somebody off to food eating jail because they ate some food on the bus. But it's going to be a rule. We're going to enforce it. Alcoholic beverages and possessing open containers on the bus is not allowed, has never been allowed. We don't allow it on the bus, nor do we allow it in our terminals. All of these things are forbidden on the bus. There are also some things that are forbidden in our terminals. So I want this to happen.
I need to illustrate that point.
And
We got it.
this is a little clip that we borrowed from
Who pulled for the stop? Didn't she pull for the stop? Stop requested.
and left it there. Smoking on the bus is absolutely, totally forbidden. Electronic, real cigarettes, it can't happen ever. If we see you smoking, we will assume that you are on. And there will probably a sprinkler system or something that comes on and put you out. So, no smoking on the bus. No pets on the bus unless they're in a pet carrier. Now, you want to bring Fido on the bus, we don't care as long as he's in a carrier. If he's a service animal, you will probably want to identify that when you get on the bus so that the driver knows he's a service animal. If we see him running around the bus, then that means that he's a service animal because they are controlled. So, and they know to be in control.
Is there a size limit to what the type or size animal you can bring on in a carrier?
No, it's been, it really, fortunately, hasn't been an issue that's come up, and, you know, as long as it's not impeding the aisle or
Right,
obstructing
that's what I
people's ability to get through.
Yeah. Thinking of somebody getting on with their kennel.
Yeah, no, good question. Good question.
Okay, carts and strollers. We prefer carts and strollers are folded before you get on the bus. Will we kick you off if it's not? Absolutely not. On the bus, and if it's necessary to push them on, take your child, take your groceries out, fold your cart or your stroller, put it so that it's out of the aisle, because we don't want the aisle, and with your ride, because it's a safety issue. We don't want people getting hurt. We don't want the bus driver, for some reason, he has to slam on brakes, this thing goes sliding down the aisle and hurting somebody, so, or hurting the driver. So, those folded. And of course, they're getting bigger, and it's really hard. So, we really want those to be folded. Littering. Littering creates bugs. It creates a mess. We put trash cans on the buses so that everybody can come on, and when they get done with their stuff and put it in the trash can. Do they do that? No, they don't. Some of them do, some of them don't. But for the most part, leave it on the floor. Bus driver picks it up, but we would really want that stuff picked up. We don't want it to be left. Vandalism of our seats and of our floors and of our buses and our property. We don't want people tagging it. I think you all know what tagging is, but they spray paint stuff and all kinds of symbols and names and I love Joe. And, you know, whatever else they want to spray paint. So we don't want that happening, and it's a clear problem, so we're going to control that.
And the comments, too, this is an action item, so as you think of things, either stop us or make sure, please, we'll get your comments at the end. Okay, next slide.
Okay. When you get on the bus, they need to have headphones on. Talking on your cell phone, listening to your radio, listening to your CD player. Personally, I like country music. You like rock and roll. So I don't want to hear your rock and roll, and I know you don't want to hear my country music. So just have your headphones on. It doesn't disturb anybody else, and everybody has a better, nicer. Combustibles and flammables and all types of things. And we understand sometimes your car may break down and you have to bring your battery. You can't for your lawnmower, you can't bring it on the bus. You're having a great barbecue this weekend and you really need that propane, you on the bus because it's dangerous. It could leak, there could be fumes, there could be an explosion, we could have people hurt, we could have people dead, and we really don't want that to happen, so we can't bring it on the bus. Soliciting. Now, I'm sure, and I happened because when I was driving it happened, and when I ride the bus it happens. People get on the bus and they say, hey, I have enough money. Anybody got a quarter? Anybody got 50 cents? We don't want our passengers bothered by other people that didn't have enough money. So there's no soliciting. We don't allow soliciting in our because we don't want our passengers bothered. We want them to sit there in comfort and wait on their next bus to come, get on the bus. Now, look, I love cookies, so I'm not going to be opposed to Girl Scout cookies on the bus or in the terminal, because I mean, you know, why don't we get this figure? Love the Girl Scout cookies, got to have this figure. everybody with me on that. So, okay, but the rest of it, we're not gonna have. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I think that's the worst. I mean, Girl Scouts, little kids, just like us listening, just like money, and then you'd be prone to give it to them, and you be feeling all that pressure. If that's the rule, that's the rule. No soliciting, no soliciting, period.
Yeah, and we're kidding about the Girl Scout cookies thing. But, hey, listen, we like the thin mints, we like, but you know.
I've got 5 granddaughters. They all sell Girl Scout cookies. Okay. Disruptive behavior on the bus, being loud, high school kids on there running up and down the aisles, swearing, because for some reason when they leave home, they act like they have no home. We've seen it. We don't like it. We don't want it to happen. We're going to stop it from happening. We don't want disrupting the other people on the bus. We don't want people putting their feet up on the bus. And we're going to show you just a little small clip of what happens.
Yeah. And after a couple more slides, and the idea really is just everybody has a comfortable ride. That we don't want to disrupt each other, cause a havoc. You know, Shelby mentioned the high school students, profanity, things that are discourteous to other folks. A couple of pictures up here. You see what they're doing in Chicago at CTA. A couple just raising awareness. You know, the guy with the boom box blowing everybody away. The lady who's on the phone. Not enough conversation. Everybody can hear. And actually, to illustrate that point just a little bit, our favorite person again. And if you see this person, let us know.
Next to her, and then shoots her. Just made herself at home. Weapons of any kind, of course, are not allowed on the bus. We recognize that guns and knives are not allowed on the bus. But there are other things that could be weapons. It all depends on how you it. For instance, the spray paint or firecrackers. Firecrackers are explosive. They're flammable. They're not allowed on our bus. Bullets, bleach, any of these things.
And you know, and the idea really is anything that can pose a harm, injure people, challenge people's safety. You know, and a lot of bullets, knives, these are obvious weapons, but I think there's certainly a lot of things on there where the operators should take note and use their best.
Absolutely. And standing behind the yellow line is a must. It is industry-wide, train, rail, buses, whatever. Even on airplanes, you can't go behind that curtain because they don't want you back there because it's a safety issue. If you're standing in front of that, you're going to block the driver's view. You're going to distract him. If he has to stop, suddenly into the windshield, and it's not going to be a good outcome. So everyone must remain behind that yellow line. Skateboarding. Skateboarding is not allowed in the terminal or on the bus. Bicycle riding, roller, scooter riding is not allowed or on the bus. And there's some kids that will probably come on and try to ride their scooter down the aisle or skate down the aisle. We don't want that happening. We don't want anybody getting hurt.
Even mentioned to me that we've had folks try to actually, you know, or maybe get on with their skates on, you know. Take the skates off, you know, carry them on there, but you can be a moving projectile if you're on the bus with them. So again, just people safety.
And once again, aisles, even people with their feet in the middle of the aisle. The driver will ask you, please put your feet around in front of you and not in the aisle, because we don't want people trying to get on and off the bus, tripping over feet and getting hurt. You know, it will be a problem. We don't want any injury. It's a safety issue. And having it ready. It would be really, really to everybody if everybody's ID is ready when they got one. When they were standing there, the bus comes and you have it ready to show the bus operator, it makes it a smoother transition from getting on the bus, and the bus can take off, instead of having to dig in your purse and a little clip of what happens when your fare's not ready.
Of course, we have an illustration of this from our favorite person, right? the world's best passenger.
I'm sure you've seen this later on our buses somewhere.
Okay. Well, I love you. No, I love you. Okay, bye-bye. Hello, how are you? Hey, so... Okay, all right. Let's see here. All right, no. Really? No. I was looking for that. Whew. Hold that. All right. So I got a 5. Is that can I some change? It's not fair only.
That's fair.
You know.
I've got. It's not fair only. I've got a 20. Will that work? It's not fair.
I gotta get to work.
And that is it. Any questions?
Was there any consideration given to putting something in about manner of dress or clothing? I mean, how you're dressed when you're on the bus, or being dressed on the bus?
I know, I actually, yes.
I was on a bus the other day where someone got on with no shirt, and I just was like, to look at somebody with...
Yeah, and I think we'll probably file that under number 10, disruptive behavior, discourteous. You know, and there's going to be some things where, you know, you set this to set the tone, you know, because right without them, you know, there's chaos. If you don't have it, folks will do whatever they want. And there's a lot of these that folks are probably going to slip by. The idea is, like Shelby said, it's a starting point. It gives us guidance. I think the ones where our code of conduct stays silent, meaning maybe it doesn't cover, the operators still have the ability to kind of step. Something's not right here. I need to step in. This person has absolutely no clothes on. I should take action. I should assess this situation and take corrective action, as we like to say in operations. But no, that's a great question.
And we are a little let out on our beach talk. Because people are here, they're tourists, and they're wearing their bathing suits, and they're wearing their shorts.
I understand that. That's what
On
the
our
regular
regular routes, yeah, we try to control that. Yes, sir.
There's a phenomenon where you're getting on a bus and it's almost full and you don't have a seat, and there are people sitting in the aisle who won't move over to the window seat to let you sit up.
Yeah.
And so, how would you address that?
Sitting, oh, okay, this is right.
Yeah, you're sitting in the aisle.
Uh-huh.
You should move to the window when you get out. You won't.
And do you ask them to, can I get over to
Yes,
that seat?
sometimes. That's
Will
right.
they let
And then sometimes they have a package that
Right.
other seats.
Oh,
You know.
okay.
And, you know, we saw examples of that, and actually, you know, the term people spreading, there's actually different transit agents. You know, for example, if you get on a train and you see somebody and they're just trying to take up 3 seats, or they have packages, you know, obviously, the person can feel free to challenge it and say, I need to get there, first and foremost. More often than not, the person's going to move their bag.
Right.
You know, and that's just how comfortable does the passenger feel.
Yeah.
The operator, though, should step in. People need to be seated, and there's seats available. You know, if our bus seats 38 folks and 14 people are sitting down and there's for a seat, then at that point we need to step in.
Yes.
You know.
Usually the driver, you just mention it to the driver, they will address that, because there's a seat available, you should be able to.
I tried to go see Jurassic World last Friday on opening night, being the movie lover that I am, and you know, I got there late. Shame on me. Okay, looking for a seat, and you know, and there's others folks there too, and you have to either go in there. There's people are saving seats. There's people with popcorn in seats. You know, I managed to find one, and there's times where they have to go and they have to go get the movie, you know, the movie staff to help them find seats, and to encourage people. You know, same situation with us. Another question? I haven't heard that since grade school. Thank you. Flashbacks about junior high. Well, that is an option, I suppose.
I just had a question about no weapons, which seems like it should be obvious, but there are situations where something might be considered a weapon that wouldn't really be being used as a weapon.
Right.
They carry the box cutter for work. Are they not supposed to carry that on the bus?
Are they brandishing it? Shelby said it best, right.
It's like driver interpretation.
Right. How are they presenting? I mean, box cutters, if I'm not mistaken, can slide. The razor can slide back in, and if they're, and if they have them,
It's like just in their pocket where
right.
they normally carry it for work, or.
But somebody's tossing it in the air or brandishing it in such a way. We were talking about that too. Okay, how far does this go? You have a baseball bat. Baseball bat could be a weapon. Sure, if somebody has it over and they're just kind of sitting there, or you could have little Jimmy going to a baseball game. So the interpreter, there's going to be just kind of the operator saying, I think you established, does this pose a threat to somebody else's safety and well-being? Then we have to challenge it.
So the drivers aren't going to take it literal, and if somebody has, their knife and there's no.
Well,
right.
There's no way of knowing it unless you twist them. Right. Now, if he's a really nice looking guy, I may twist him.
You challenge it, chances are they're not going to see it, but if somebody's holding it up as it proposes.
I've seen the guys that have it, you have it.
The person's not going to get kicked off. If they use the box cutter as a threat, then yes, we have to address it. Absolutely.
Right. I wouldn't see why there'd be any reason for it to be out of the pocket.
Right.
Because these in the shelters.
So that's going to be the next step, and I'm actually glad you brought that up.
Gloria had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, the number one was the food and drink thing, and that to me seems like there's some discretion on that too, because you see people all the time with their water bottles
right.
and stuff like that.
Right.
And I think my interpretation is that it's a very good rule that basically people will probably carefully violate it, but the driver's not going to stop the bus because you're
exactly. The way I answer it is this, and we actually had some debate about that this morning with our dispatchers and supervisors. So you have to have the rule to know where to draw the line. Without it, it's just blurred lines. But you're right. If we stopped the bus for everybody had a water bottle and had a coffee on, we probably wouldn't get anywhere. I picture the guy with the hoagie and there's lettuce and there's pickles and everything drawn up, or people are just creating a mess. There's really no food. There's really no eating on the bus. So I'm going to have to ask you to wrap that up and save it. Somebody opens up a whole box of pizza. But you're right. There's where a mother or a father, may pull out a Capri Sun or some crackers to help their little toddler. You're diabetic. Maybe you need to have a candy bar on you. Maybe you need to have a soda. So there are going to be some exceptions. And again, that's where we're really going to have to rely on the operators. But having the rule, we think, kind of at least curbs the behavior for the most part. Any other questions before I...
Maybe you guys should talk about the enforcement on how...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Violent code of conduct can lead to expulsion or trespass from all PSTA property and vehicles and or arrest by law. So, we may have to call SWAT to come get you. We have a really great rapport with all law enforcement agencies in Pinellas County and Hillsborough County because we do so with Hillsborough County also. And whenever we call them right away, because they know if we call them, we say, okay, this is PSTA, I have this guy on the they're fighting and the bus driver, and we give them the location and they jump in their cars and they get right there, along with my transportation supervisors. There's at least 3 transportation supervisors on the road most of the day.
Yeah, 3 to 4 most of the day. And the biggest takeaway is going to be repeat offenders, okay, and we're able to identify them, we'll get trespassed and or banned from service. And so if you're a repeat offender and constantly disruptive behavior, profanity, you're posing a threat, you're really causing uncomfortable situations for the rest of the riders, it's going to get to the point where you could be on the bus and off of PSDA services. And so there kind of has to be an end point. Now, certainly for singular offenses, we do have to take people off the bus if they become so disruptive. And then if they become a repeat offender, it may warrant just trespassing them altogether, especially if it's an actual crime.
you, if you trespass somebody for life, we need, you know, do you have an appeals process in place where, and a committee where they can come and because maybe they're not guilty, or maybe they're, you know, I mean, do you have a process in place where they can, agreements?
At this time, we do not. We have quite a few people that are trespassing off the PSTA bus. Do they ride the bus? Absolutely we do. Do we throw them off as long as they don't cause any problems? No. Because they know that they've been trespassed. So they get on the bus, they pay their fare, they sit down, they ride. I have drivers come to me all the time and say, I know he's trespassed, but he rides my bus every day. I say, well, is he causing a problem? Well, no. Is he paying his fare? He gets on the bus, he rides the bus, he goes where he needs to go, and he's not bothering anybody, so we don't have to enforce that trespass. But if he gets on the bus and he creates a problem the next time he gets on, and we know he's trespassed, we're going to call law enforcement, they're going to come and take him away. And they will do that every single time if he shows up and causes a problem.
Brett, did you have anything to add to that? To this question? Okay. I thought...
I mean, for the track committee, you know, we've been talking about this for 3 months, and Jeff showed you last month some of the other transit systems implemented this. PSA's current courtesy guidelines are at 5, and so as you see on the list on page 9 of your packet, we're going to 15. They're all different than the 5, and the whole purpose of this thing is to be stronger, is to... I mean, obviously it's going to be at the discretion of the driver. We don't really have an enormous way of enforcing it, you know, with SWAT teams and whatnot. But the idea is to be a little bit harsher to make it better, better than having no rules, right? And you know, it's up to. I really take this as the number to track. You guys can provide us the best guidance to. If you think this is a good approach, then we'll go for it. If you don't, you think we should have no rules, we'll do that. You know, it's really up to the rider. We've heard a lot of complaints about the cleanliness of the vehicles, down to the unruly passengers. We get complaints all the time. Shelby has been here for 30-some years. She has heard every one of these things that's happened. And, you know, it doesn't have to happen. And it's not going to get perfect, but it's going to be better if we have a new sort of heightened awareness that you're supposed to act appropriately on the bus.
Absolutely.
It'll be better for everybody.
Can we go back to Vivian's question about how this is going to be marketed?
So what we're going to do is, you know, once we agree, we're going to get together with marketing, and so this has to be rolled out. Folks have to know, and so we're going to come up with some good ideas to raise awareness. It's not necessarily all of these rules that we just showed you, all 15, that do apply to the terminals. I think there are certain things that folks, you know, they're smoking in and around the terminal, maybe not necessarily rollerblading. There might be somebody who walks their dog by the terminal, but we will figure out a way to display these rules, to get them up so that passengers can see them, and our rules to our terminals as well. All right.
Do we need
to move on now, or can I make one comment? Sure. I'm sorry. I kind of wanted to go back to what GW was saying about if someone is trespassing. I think there would be. I personally feel there needs to be an appeals option. Not even if it's not necessarily right away, but if you have someone who's having things going on in their lives, maybe some addiction or something, and a year from now they're clean and can behave appropriately, I think they shouldn't have to be hiding from a trespass in order to be on the bus. So I would feel that an appeal would process, which isn't necessarily to do with themselves, but an appeals process for people who are trespass, I think, would be important.
The one thing you want to get clear about the trespass, there is no lifetime trespass. Trespasses are usually only 6 months, anywhere from 3 months, 6 months, or 2 years. depending on violation. Most of the people trespass through either, if they have like the Marshall Terminal, they only trespass from Marshall Terminal. Very seldom, I think it's only twice so far we trespass from the system.
Oh.
But we can go ahead and contain it. I think it's a good idea. There should be an, well, we'll create one.
We'll work and we'll draft. I think there's certainly agencies that have it now too, so we can bring that to you and let you take a look at the language.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
We're voting on it.
Writers put a kind of, so then you're.
We're writing it, so we're voting on
You're
it.
adopting, it's a motion to adopt the writer's code of conduct as it stands, as presented.
Well, yeah, to recommend it to the board.
To recommend, what, right, to recommend adoption to the board. Yes, TA board.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed?
Okay.
Good afternoon. I am Debbie Elias. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at the SBA. And we're going to be talking about the 2016 budget today. We've taken the last couple months to talk about it, and now we're putting it in one piece for you. And what we're going to do is to take a look at where we are in our current fiscal year in 15. We're going to be taking a look at the budget summary for 16, which is built off of the 15 budget forecast. And then we're going to look and say, what are the decisions that we make today? How are they going to impact the future of PSTA beyond 2016? Taking a look at our fiscal year 15, which our fiscal year ends on September 30th, we're anticipating a surplus of $486,000 by the end of this year that can go into our reserves. This represents some very positive financial that we've been able to put away, and we'll be talking about how we're going to be using those. One of the things in the committee last month was our capital improvement program, the CIP. For the first time, I think, in PSTA history, we are going to be using our own funds, the funds that we've been putting away into reserves, to help buy buses, which is our primary capital goal to achieve is our bus replacement plan. By we have to balance off on our side. And on the operating side, if we're using our reserves, we have to be able to be financially sustainable. So it's a balancing act, and we have to find ways of achieving it. If we take absolutely nothing, we are going to have a deficit next year. That's in the third column over, and it is a deficit of $382,000. So we have to make decisions that will change that and impact that. What we're going to see going forward in our famous alligator is we are going to have a deficit that grows from $382,000 each year if we do nothing. However, we have to look at every option available to us. We've talked about some of these before and how they have an impact on our bottom line. We have advertising revenues. We outsource our advertising. We can increase revenues by 1,000. We look at service redesign. We can save about $930. By looking at fare adjustments, we can increase a little $1 million. By taking our property tax or ad valorem tax up to its maximum millage, off by bringing in a little over $1 million there. And last but certainly not least, various efficiencies that we are doing will save us over $100,000. So the decisions that will be made by the board over the next couple of months will have a long-term impact on our financial sustainability. And by doing these, all of these items I just mentioned, we went from having a red allocation to seeing where we've got the green lines, where we are now going another 5 years. Let's take a look at some of the budget assumptions that we have. Our biggest expense is not in the expense side, but on the revenue side, our major revenue sources are fare revenue. We've seen a change from people going to the TV program. We're assuming that we're going to continue to see that. So we've included 2% further loss in fare revenue as people move to that program. Our increased property values are a good positive note. Property values alone are going to be bringing in $2.4 million next year. Despite this good news increase, we have still lost $42.5 million since the economy tanked back in 2007. So that represents over 1 year's worth of revenue to us that we've lost. Let's take a look at the expense assumptions. Our personnel is our biggest expense category. It's money for our collective bargaining agreement settlement. It includes step increases for our union and merit-based bonuses. It includes a 3% merit-based increase for the non-union people. The other thing is we're actually at reduction in workforce, but we have added in 2 service attendants for cleanliness on our buses. We know how important everyone. We've been listening to what everyone has had to say, so we're there. Another area that's going up is our fringe benefits. We anticipate a 7% increase in our health insurance. That is shared with the employees, and we are moving to something like a premium arrangement. It doesn't affect what the employees get as benefits. It helps to keep our costs lower. Without this, the increase would have been over 10%. We're also getting additional money for repair parts. We want to make sure our buses are not only reliable, but we can increase the from 12 years to 15. So we need to put more money towards the maintenance of our buses. But good news, fuel is down. Diesel fuel is coming down by over $1.4 million. We anticipate it will only cost us $2.40 a gallon next year. We've been talking about the path forward, and I love what our marketing staff has done. They've created for each of the areas in the pyramid. You'll be attached to different board resolutions that will come to you going forward. So you can see in the pyramid, each area has a little icon that we can identify. And on the base of the pyramid is our focus on our customer-oriented public transit services. That's our foundation for the budget. And the budget includes at least in there that relate to this. We have customer service. We're going to be doing follow-up surveys on our customer service training to make sure it's effective. We've got a strategic marketing plan that includes community outreach, because that's very important as we go forward in designing a better system. We're going to have cleaner buses with an additional staffing for that. And we want to invest in our employees. So not only do we have our merit-based increases in there, training is we also have some for our board. We want to make sure we have a strong governance model, and we're going to be looking to do some training for our board members. We're also bringing to the board a federal lobbyist this month. We want to be able to be sure we're going to get enough money for buses, and we're going to use this lobbyist to help us out with that. From a financial sustainability standpoint, buses are important. And staff has taken the savings projects where we've come in under budget and moved monies around, have taken projects and put them as a lower priority, so that we can focus on that bus replacement plan. So we have not only been dedicating our reserves to that bus plan, and despite all of that, we are actually down $1.6 million from last year. So it's a good news story. We have to take into consideration all the things I've just talked about in our discussion. keep that going for multi-year sustainability. Also, we are going to be looking for oriented service redesign. We're going to have a community bus plan, and we're going to be saving approximately $930,000. Take a look at alternative redesign options. So we've included $200,000 in there to address that and any enhancements we may have to the core service. We'll be talking more about that in July. Now this chart, as I mentioned to staff the other day, is not really makes you go blind looking at it, but it's a lot of data out there. What it's telling us is our revenues minus our expenses, making the decisions we can do today will sustain us out for 5 years. It's key. Taken today will help us in the future. Fiscal 16 budget reflects our path forward. And as I just mentioned, decisions today equal long-term sustainability. Are there any questions on the fiscal 16 budget? Yes, Wayne.
On the ad valorem revenue, the slide 14 that you used, does that take in a portion of the ad valorem taxes that we have not been accessing to date?
No, it does not. That would be, I don't know, there are various communities that do not participate in the property tax. So we haven't included in there if they were to contribute. I think that's a huge step, a huge reach for them to be able to do. Two of the communities, St. Pete Beach and Treasure Island, actually do provide us some funding towards the service that they give, but they don't collect the property tax. Any questions?
What is, I know that the TD program is kind of like a, just as well, you know, it's like so many poor people, you know, but I mean, how does the TD balance against the regular ridership? I mean, is it comparable in the numbers of people who just get passes and the people who get TD passes?
We're finding that's growing significantly, and it's starting to taper off. But I can get you some numbers on that. I don't have them off the top of my head. But we have seen a significant loss of revenue as people move away from buying either weekly passes, daily passes, monthly passes, and move into the TD program.
In the numbers, we have selling 3,000 TD passes, about 3,000 people a month to close to 6,000 a month. In the last year, we've almost doubled. But those 6,000 people, our daily ridership is around 35,000 trips a day. Those 6,000 people who are low income are getting as TD monthly riding all the time. So they make up a pretty high portion of the 45,000 trips a day.
Is that, have you found a hindrance of that at all to the budget or a drag on the budget? Or?
It has had a negative impact on our bottom line, because we're seeing a loss of revenue of about $1.4 million. So it does there. Yes,
Fuel costs, because you were saying that the fuel costs have been, you know,
they're coming down from where they were a year ago.
I mean, I'm sure you see all the data. Is it expected to stay down? I mean, is there any kind of contingency?
Oh, I'm not investing business, but I do like looking at the futures on the oil market. And what we do here, because I don't have the crystal ball, is that we usually lock in our fuel rates. So we're in that process now, going through, and we're in what is called a consortium with other transit agencies that HART across the bay is leading. And what we do is we look to see what it is. Traditionally, PSTA has locked in 100% of our fuel purchases. We're going to look to lock in less than that this year. So if the market drops, we can get greater savings. If it starts to go up, we still have that room to lock in more. One of the other things that we're successful doing this year is previously Hart would only do 1 year at a time. So right about this time of year when I'm working on my budget, I'd like to know what the fuel costs are going to be next year or have the ability to control that. So we went to Hart and said, why don't you do a 5-year program so that at least going out, I can start locking in now and have greater certainty in my budget. In that way, I don't have the crystal ball going way out, but I can control in the near future. And somebody else had a question.
On the benefits, going back to the fringe benefit, is that an increase in regular salaried employees, union, both? Are there
That's
any
everybody.
union negotiations coming up anywhere that we're going to have to take into consideration?
Yeah, the health insurance is everybody in the authority.
Okay.
So when we see premiums going up, they're going up for everybody.
And yes, we do have a labor negotiation pending with our biggest union. Their contract comes up for renewal September 30th.
And
So
I'm
that could
actually,
affect things as well?
yeah,
It could, yeah.
we're actually meeting with the union tomorrow, going over this and some alternatives they might have if they don't want to see this increase. What we're hearing is they'd like to keep the same level of benefits, but we're going to be going through all tomorrow with them.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the budget? Okay, well, thank you very much.
For the track committee, we're getting, the budget is obviously a pretty complex document that a lot of it necessarily doesn't have direct impact on the service we provide, but the budget is the most that drives our decisions on stuff that does affect the riders, the routes, the fares, everything. So, over the next couple of months, you're going to see, we're going to ask you to take a position on adjustments to our fares and adjustments in the TD bus pass program and all that, and the routes, which Debbie's budget sheet presented. Maybe also at the end of that time, with those key components of the track committee, I think has special interest in for you to take an action on the overall budget as well, ultimately.
If we have ideas on things that can be worked with on the TD program, who would we contact to give those ideas to, or do we wait for that to come to the track?
Yeah, you can contact Chris Cochran. No, you can keep me, right, Mark, yeah, or Terry. Yeah.
Okay. If you have some ideas you want to talk about today, we can make sure we talk right after the meeting, give you the right audience.
Okay. Great. Chris?
We're going to talk about this in a second. In front of you, everyone should have received a document that is titled System Redesign Work Plan. So this right here are these future service changes, which you've been, we discussed a little bit in here. Come back and talk to you about what we brought forth to the board as far as the plan and putting those service changes into action. So in the last board workshop, what we were able to do is present the board is creating sort of this overarching policy in which they understand how we're moving forward in the evaluation of the routes and a work plan that puts it into action. So what we wanted to introduce is that work plan that puts what we've been discussing lately into action. So what you have here are 10 groups of proposed changes that are of the community bus plan that you've been introduced to previously. So this community bus plan, as I described it to the planning committee, is sort of this canvas of ideas and recommendations that were made prior to the green light plan, in which we had a no new revenue scenario ourselves in now. The referendum did not pass, and they provided what they thought the concept should look like if we weren't to get any revenue. So This work plan is a methodology of steps in which we will use consistently every single time through all 10 of these groups. Consistency in how stuff is done. There's consistency in how the board, the public, and you all understand how things are being done, analyzed, and ultimately recommendations made and implemented. So those 4 steps are really that route performance evaluation introduced to, where we had the graph of the performance of the routes that helps us identify how the route is performing in the system, helps us identify what metrics, whether it's ridership or fare collection, that may be where that route lies in the performance, and also that quantitative part where we dive more into who are the people on these routes, surveys, public engagement, and of course board engagement is part of that as well. And then the final step, recommendations to the board, and then approving how it is going to be implemented. You know, the surveys for the, let's see, 3 weeks ago we did surveys on the 1, the 30, the 58, the East Lake Connector, and what am I missing? 444, thank you. And we got those results back. Sit down with a consultant, and we had some recommendations on how they can improve that reporting for all of us, and we should get that soon. You all will have an opportunity to see that. And those will be the kind of surveys and public engagement that we're going to look at in helping us formulate the fact that it's a poor performance. Again, we want to understand what the public how the public is using the system, and if we do make the changes, what are their alternatives? Are we leaving them with no alternative? If unfortunately that becomes the case, we need to be a part of helping them and what else is out there for them to be able to get access to our system. So with that, these 10 groups here are reflective of really a trigger somewhere in that performance monitoring that we have done. The first group will be those 5 routes that we've talked about, as well as splitting the Route 819, some realignment options, realigning the 18 to the Seminole campus, truncating the 18 at Grand Central. So these are some of the options for these, but as you look through these, notice the headings. What we've done is try to logically, geographically, so that we can, when we look at a route that is being, we're looking at the routes that border it, we're looking at the community that's and we're doing this analysis, this consistent analysis. This is a 2.5-year plan or so. Go carries through to the end of 2017. That's our proposed time and these groups, and it'll be very challenging, but it's definitely something that we feel confident we can do. Is there any questions or?
Yep. On splitting the Route 19, how are you going to do that, north and south?
Yes, sir. That's right now that's the vision. Tomorrow, Thursday and Saturday, we will be doing surveys. So tomorrow morning, the first out of the shop will have, first 2 will have surveyors on it. So, and they'll be doing surveys throughout the day, Wednesday and Thursday and Saturday.
So, where would the, terminus be for the north 18 and south 18?
The 18 would truncate at, instead of going from Grand Central to Williams Park, it would just end at Grand Central. I feel pretty confident there's enough very good service that goes from Williams Park to Grand Central. That sort of fits in. Many of you have heard that, hopefully, kind of our long-standing hope to be able to pull out of Williams Park, and it's looking very promising at this point that that's what's going to be able to happen. So that fits perfect into us being able to move towards that. The Route 18 will still go where it goes. Now, the only difference is that we're proposing it goes up Seminole to 86. It'll go west out to 113th, serve the campus. It'll go up to 102nd and continue the same way it does now. So we can take the time that we've added on the 86th Street and 102nd Street, and we can sort of balance that out with the time that we're between Williams Park and Grand Central. So it's a revenue neutral change.
Where will you be transferring the activity from to?
Any one of the routes that run between Grand Central and Williams Park. Or are you saying with the whole Williams Park plan? The concept is this grid concept where transfers will be made on the street. And, you know, it's a solid concept now. It's part of this community bus plan. Where everything is going to happen is not exactly sure yet, but, you know, there's a great deal of analysis that needs to be done. So match routes that are crossing at east and west and north and south with those who are transferring between between their routes the best that we can. So, but there will no longer be, I believe there may be one or two routes that will go to Williams Park, but the rest of them will be, you know, the transfers will be made on the street, so maybe you might have to walk a block or around the corner, much like you would in a big city.
If the transfers are made on the street, the time point's going to be, so the buses are going to be sitting on the street.
Right, that's something we do have to work out. We're aware of that, and that is all part of the plan. We are also working with the city of St. Petersburg to address a lot of those issues and creating sort of these concepts of mini hubs where these locations will be where, I mean, we have to be cognizant of drivers need a place to stop, they need a place to rest, use the bathroom. So there is.
They've started giving them bathroom breaks?
Well, that's you know, the hope of all is that we can create more time for the riders, but also make it.
I do want to ask you one thing. On the 444, have they actually found any alternatives for these people? Alternatives?
We have been discussing what alternatives will be, and it's going to be an ongoing discussion. Who is using the 444 to get to say Walmart? What are you know, there's a myriad of possibilities out there. But the fact of the matter is, to be done about the 444 at this point in time, and the right solution is likely not what you want.
Well, it's not servicing some of the neighborhoods that could utilize it, and then it's not taking them to the places that are no longer there on the stops, and the new places it doesn't seem to be taking them to. It seems like the only place you can go is Walmart.
Right.
And so I know my mom lives in one of those particular communities, you can't get to the 444. And so they've tried all sorts of different things for transit, it really worked out for them.
You know, the surveys are very telling. We know where people want to go. So we need to get in there. We need to work with the communities. We need to work with the organizations in that area and figure out a solution. Now, continuing to run the service as it is, it's not a solution that's in the best interest of PSTA's customers, which is the riders. That can be done much better in providing better service for everybody.
And I'm all for using the more sustained routes.
Yes.
Like where my mom is very close to the 74. However, they have to cross Park Boulevard with no crosswalk or any light anywhere. And so you have people with walkers and electric chairs going across the train track. And that's how people from her building get on the 74. So.
Just seeing.
If you have pedestrian issues in places where, you know, you would access, or in this case, your mother and her community would be able to access the bus system, and we can help you with the city or the state to get a more safe pedestrian access, we can do that. And that is a solution that we can do as staff without impacting the operation.
And I would think,
please, on Park Boulevard, the specific location, we will put that on our list to talk about with FDOT or the county.
I mean, I just went out and spent about an hour with a gentleman that potential being impacted on the Route 58, he has the same problem. And it turns out for him, he was writing the wrong people all along. So we had the opportunity to figure out who the right people were to talk to, and we know that there's plans for crosswalks at an intersection, and we're going to do everything that we can to help move that up so that changes can be made in conjunction with our changes. So that's exactly the kind of communication that we need to hear back from communities, which is why it's imperative that we get out there and hear from them. So
If they eliminate 58, that would mean the only east-west would be at Park Boulevard and Almerton? There wouldn't be any other east-west routes?
in that area, yes. Almerton and Park.
Down to Park Boulevard and the vacant space in that one. First space, nothing, I don't know what's happening on I do know there used to be a bus that went along 58th Street before they started the 444. There used to be a bus that traveled back and forth on 58th Street, which picked up Crystal, and, you know, they had it work. And of course, people trying to get out to the housing thing, there's no other way for them to get there except for the 444 right now. I mean, there wouldn't be anybody to be, there wouldn't, unless they would be able to get to that government facility that they have to go if they get rid of 444.
You're right. But they can't get across the ditch. It's between
Yeah, I mean,
20 yards away, but you have to go all the way down.
they got to get on and play in traffic on Vandy Boulevard.
You know, we put a stop in there, and in 4 months, there was 2 people that took the bus there. I'm not saying if there was better service, perhaps there wouldn't be better numbers, but, you know, we coordinated with them. We put the service out there. The 444 was the most logical thing that we could put out there, and unfortunately, people didn't go there. And unfortunately, there was no. We hope that the city's coming, say, you know, early in the process and say we're looking to put there, and you know, that would have been a for.
Is narrative, it shows what we, or what part of the month. I realize 444 doesn't have heavy usage, but when is the most usage of the month?
That is something that we can drill down and look at, but, you know, when you're looking at huge amounts of data, the average daily is really the.
Well, I mean, at the
best
end
case.
of the
We
month.
have peak times, we know the drive between 6 and 9 and 3 and 6.
I mean, at certain times of the month, we're gonna have a heavier usage on 444, because that's when their funds come in.
Right.
At the end of the month, everybody's, so they're not using 444. Go to Walmart and buy their groceries.
It's going to be a challenge, Benji, but we're going to get out there, work with the communities. We're going to figure out every possible thing to do to create alternatives and be a part of a solution to the
Okay.
problem. Yes.
Couple of things. Has there been any consideration given to installing more bike racks at various shelters along the way where people might be able to ride to a stop? They as easily
Sure, I think
able to
that
access walking ways.
I can speak to the program here.
And then the other question I had is there any, has the downtown Clearwater fallen off the table with all of this, or where?
It hasn't.
Okay.
It definitely hasn't. There are discussions going on. I think, you know, ultimately the grand vision of the rail and everything is, has put a little bit of a, you know, you have to go back and see, and they need certain facilities. You know, the aquarium is on the mainland, so things are changing. But that idea of intermodal, some form of better intermodal center down something we have to address, because Park Street is just outgrown and obsolete at this point.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Ty.
I just wanted to ask, looking at where they're talking about streamlining the 62 and having 67, 76 for the old horn, go down to Safety Harbor. Looking at, because it's already hard enough when you're using the 62 to go up that way, to get the right time, and you have to wait a long time because it's only a once an hour bus. Are they looking at the connections and how long it's going to extend people's drive?
That will all be part of that analysis, absolutely. When you're making these changes, scheduling is really important, because you make one change somewhere, all of our stops are made to come in at some sort of sync time to be able to transfer within some reasonable point of time. So, that might be the biggest and kind of most cumbersome part of all of this is adjusting the schedule.
Yeah, because what would normally be a 2 to 3 hour ride for me could turn into a much longer having to transfer to a different bus from CCD. So, just wanted to look at that 37 hours.
Can Cassandra speak real quick?
And of course, every time they transfer, it's going to cost them an additional amount of money. Or it's a question of either buying, instead of buying 2 one-way passes, you're going to have to buy an all-day pass.
And what's an all-day pass?
Well, if you only ride 2 buses, it's still cheaper to pay for 2 one-way trips.
Shouldn't be.
It's $4 pass, it's $4.
Okay, and it's $4. So it's $4 for 2 one-way rides.
You're correct.
So, in other words, overall, add an additional.
This is our work plan. You're going to see the details of each one of these groups throughout, every few months. So next month, we're going to bring you the details of Group 1 and what that looks like, who we've talked to, what does the 1 and the 30 now look like. Understand put together these groups in a way that is supposed to save the entire system for the most people. And looking at this first group, and as Chris mentioned, this is all data-driven. First, we're looking at the numbers, we're talking to people, but you are going to see each one of these. So there's no decision today. You'll see Group 1 next month. In a few months, you'll see Group 2. In a few months after that, you'll see the work that we've done on Group 3, and all the way down through the group. So this won't be the last chance that we have.
We're talking about years. Is that calendar years or fiscal years? Like the stuff that's going to be addressed in 2016, is that calendar?
Those will be fiscal years. Fiscal years. So October.
Let's move on with this.
You all will have plenty of opportunity to see what's in the next meeting, to be able to get a better understanding of what we've done, hopefully to give you a little better idea of how we're approaching it and what your options are going to be. So our next item here is our shelter. You all are probably the last people I need to tell you about of many of our shelters in our system, and really the role that they play in our system. They're obviously very critical for safety and keeping you all and the riders in some shade, away from out of the rain. But additionally, when putting out shelters, a consideration is ultimately in making it a better rider experience for everybody, and taking all of these things into consideration and being able to a shelter and a better riding experience. For just a little background on the current status of our shelter, we have shelters out there 25 years old. We have not put a new shelter from a contract on the street since late 2010. In March, we were able to vendor contract through a competitive bid. And if you haven't seen, I'm sorry, I apologize if I've shown you the rendering before, but you'll see it in here. So we're kind of at the point where we're literally comparing shelters that we have with other really old shelters that are out there, and it's just coming to a point. We need to start really taking a look at where we're going to invest this money with our contract, as opposed to just throwing shelters. We need to have a methodology in which we, not only are we putting the shelters in areas that are consistent with what we expect the future to be, you know, it has to have a good impact on riders, and we have some other considerations that we want to talk about, and I'll get into that here in a moment. So up top is this kind of old brown design scene, and this is our new shelters that you'll see coming online here at the end of this year. Through by the end of January, we'll have the first set out. So we come up with this this distribution strategy that really focus on customer needs, and also at the same time working with local municipalities and supporting their own local plans. Many of them have beautification plans, corridor plans, areas. South St. Pete has one of those. So we're going to be looking at all of these and taking into consideration where we're going to be putting these shelters out. So our methodology in deciding where we're going to put stuff, the first thing we're looking at these customer-focused needs. Obviously, very high ridership is one of the biggest considerations. Who are the people around the shelter that we're servicing? We look at sort of maximizing this area impact, and that's looking if we have high clusters of high ridership, 4 or 5 shelters in this one area. That has a good impact on visibility for people, as well as servicing the needs of the riders. And of course, we have the whole geographic equity. As I've presented to many of you who when I discussed the Title VI program, we are obligated to ensure that we are distributing our amenities equitably amongst the minority and low-income neighborhoods. This is one of those maps. Right-hand side here, these blue areas represent the centers where together the population of individual areas are above average for low-income and minority populations. So we're able to overlay our map of where shelters are, where different amenities are, and ensure that as we're maintaining that equity across the and PSDA does a very good job. We also are looking at these higher ridership that don't have shelters currently, and you can see there are some really significant numbers here. Most all of them are along Central Avenue and out on the beaches on Gulfview Boulevard, Gulf Boulevard, excuse me, and some in Clearwater. And really, the reason why we don't have shelters out at most of these locations is really just right of way. It's hard to have, there's just not available space. Part of it is we need to have space off the back end of the sidewalk to put a cement and have them up to the specs that people that the state and the local municipalities expect. So part of this is looking at expansion portion of it, and where can we put shelters at locations that don't have shelters currently, that may not have had high ridership before, and also this idea of replacing what's out there. So sort of the second methodology to this, which will come into play more in our second phase of distribution and more towards the expansion, is this community revitalization, and that's working with the city's programs. We have, like, Clearwater is a good example. They defined a development area downtown. The beaches have this Gulf Boulevard beautification program. So we want to be able to deploy our shelters in areas that make sense, that might coordinate well with the city's plans as well. And it's just an effective and efficient way of doing it. So again, all this has to do with sort of leveraging these opportunities and creating new partnerships is always a big part. So our recommendations that we are making that we're making forward as far as is having this balanced approach in how we deploy these shelters in the next couple phases we put these out. And that's really, we have our first phase, which is really aimed at replacement. I'll show you a map of where we're proposing the first 31 shelters to go out. And again, this expansion idea of that has an element of reusing some of the shelters that are still in good shape as well. So this is our first phase recommendations. You can see most of these are transfer centers. There's 31 shelters at these locations, and we're proposing to be able to, we're recommending to be able to put really larger shelters, like you might see at Indian Rock. There's a 4th Street South corridor in there that fits well into an improvement area in South St. Pete that needs shelters anyway. So we've this kind of gives you an idea of how we're taking an approach to being able to deploy the shelters. And I apologize, I didn't have a lot of detail on this, is really looking at if we are replacing a shelter in good shape, we want to look at if it's in good shape and we can put it somewhere else and replace the shelter in worse condition, maybe one of those 25, 30-year-old shelters. Do everything we can to repurpose those ones that are in good condition and help to kind of spread the deployment out. We also have some situations. Right now we have the potential opportunity to be able to make some improvements with some funding from in Clearwater between Sunset Road and Countryside. So we're taking those things into consideration as well. And if we can reasonably make improvements with other funds, we certainly want to be able to leverage that opportunity and extending the availability of funds for us. So we're looking at everything and being able to make the best decision that we can throughout the county. And again, the same way we did with the groups, looking at deployments throughout the county and spreading it out the best we can throughout the municipalities. So, any questions on that?
I know what shelter, that's obviously something we talked about. Yeah. That would be a well change. Like a couple people I've talked to, what they want was a place where they could come and like get tickets or passes. Not so much a Park Street, like if you've ever been on the Tampa streetcar system, they have automated machine booth. Yeah. So if we could, I don't know how expensive that would be, but if we get something like that, so someone can go get like a Pinellas pass or pass, put it in your numbers, put in a couple bills, slide the card.
We've actually looked at the feasibility of those, and they're really they're cost prohibitive really to be able to implement something like that. However, do know that the whole and mobile technology is in the works, and that is going to solve a lot of the people's problems. Part of that smart card, the ability to have a lot more third-party vendors to be able to get cards. And maybe if there's a Publix right there, to be able to go into a Publix. That's an issue that we're well aware of, and we're something we're trying to address and moving to the new technology.
My question goes more to the design of the shelter that you've got on slide 7.
Yes.
My concern is the wall on the end of it.
Yes.
How are you going to be able to see when a bus is coming, and how is the driver?
It's very see-through. That's very translucent.
I mean, it's hard enough right now, supposedly completely.
That was a very important thing that was taken into consideration. I know this is just a rendering drawing. It is, there's a standard and policy that PSBA has that the screen window needs to be easily seen through. So that's been thought out, and this This here is just sort of illustrating the colors, but do know you will be able to, you'll have no problem seeing it. You will have no problem seeing the passage as well.
My other question is that a solar panel?
Yes.
Charge, because that seems awesome.
Let me, I'll real quickly, because we're running late on time. All standard shelter for a base price, and they're sort of a la carte items. In all of those ones we ordered, for the most part, there's electricity at the site, which is great, because those options are about 20% of the cost of a solar panel, which runs about $2,000. And we have to be very careful where we put those, because they can be damaged, and that's very costly. But it just gives us a lot more options in what we can do. So,
What is the power?
what's that?
What does the power run inside of the shelter?
Yes,
Okay,
LED
that's,
lights, yes.
yes,
Yes, there are LED lighting packages in there. Which is, the LED runs very low wattage and very low cost, and of course the solar is very efficient. And the solar power will be, those first ones we looked at, a lot of them weren't, it wasn't reasonable to put solar power in it just because there were trees nearby, and it just wouldn't be very effective, so. And in some of the areas, we go out, you can see that people just beat up the lighting that's in there now, so, the electric ones are.
Not with our new Riders Code of Conduct.
No.
Exactly.
Stop.
Yeah, right.
You're gonna have people, the dozen inches at the shelter.
I think that should be
All right, so you all should, we have the plan to have the first 31 up on the street by January, or maybe in the first week or so of January, and we will continue to, they will be pumping these things out through the county, and they're going to look awesome, and you all are going to enjoy them, so.
Super. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, you'll see phase 2 and 3 later.
Yes, that is after the January one. We are going to kind of make those phases seamless, so people, there won't be a big gap between groups of them going out. So, and all that has to do with timing of orders and how we get it in. So we have 3 primary phases that will be going out.
How long does it take to actually physically replace the shelter? Oh, really?
While to assemble them, but once they get them on the street, they put them on a flatbed and stick them in the ground.
If anybody hasn't asked it yet, what are the old shelters? Are they gonna try to ship them to another place?
I would just, the ones that are that we may replace or move, we will put them where there's a more beat-up shelter.
I am curious about one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Does the VA take any part of this?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, they don't contribute to,
No.
okay.
But it is one of the biggest ridership in our whole system. So right now, the ones out there are just bad.
Oh, I know what the VA shelters are.
So those are definitely on the list. And the place that's important, you got a lot of riders that need, they need that.
Oh, yeah, as I say, and of course, like the shops haven't been there that long, so.
Those are be a great example of how we will repurpose those and be able to, they're in great shape, and somewhere else that has already permitted with the exact same design, and we can take an old beat up one out and replace it without any additional administrative costs.
Yeah. I mean, I know some of them are pretty grim on where they are. And has there been any of, and I know we do have a couple around, but have there been any of the communities that have made an interest in having help?
Yes, and I think there's a good chance we may be coming back to you all about implement that in the future. It's amenities partnership program that we sort of tried to launch on it a little bit, but it's something that needs to be addressed, and just some process stuff that we have to do that. Everybody's own procurement.
I had to drop out for a minute. Has the city of Clearwater actually decided they're going to allow shelters over on the beach?
I do not know.
Well,
But they're making
I know one thing for a long time.
Is there a prohibition against them?
I mean, you know.
Honestly, they are on our list of
Yeah,
super
I
high
don't think
ridership with none
I
out
think it's
there.
a space issue and a
Yeah.
cost issue more than it's a not allowed
No, it's
issue.
the city of Clearwater wanted
You're really talking about
fancy shelters
the advertising.
on paper. I'm
No,
talking
that,
about
but
on
that,
Clearwater Beach.
advertising shelters within the city,
There's a few at, kind of at the north end of the beach, but there's none down there where the beach is.
I think it's more of a space issue.
Yeah, I don't know if you were here for that part of it, but there was a part of the discussion that talked about high ridership stops with no bus shelters, and the problem with that is there's just no space.
Well, as I
You need to
said,
put a big concrete pad, but we're working on coming up with some creative
you know,
solutions.
I know that Clearwater Beach wanted a certain type, but it also has to be hurricane proof, so.
Correct.
I mean, and that's not hurricane proof. You know.
Oh, these are made to withstand, which is why many of the concrete pads have to be replaced in the
Okay.
All right.
Chris, thank you.
Thanks.
I think with that, did you have anything to add?
if any of you are going down to St. Petersburg or going to the Tampa Bay Rays game, stop by Berg's, we have a Dunk the Pump event going on right now where, well, you all are on tracks, you already have your pass, but you can throw a ball at someone in a dunk tank, and if you dunk the person, or you can get in the dunk tank, free, you get a PSA buster.
Can we ask who's gonna be in the dunk tank? Is it like you or
Um,
James or?
I'm not sure who's going to be in the dunk tank, but it started at 5, so someone's in there now. And it goes on until the baseball game starts.
How many days plus that? 30 days? 1 day?
I don't know. For you, as long as you come in the track meetings, you get a...
Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah. Another thing I just wanted to say, I just wanted to express my appreciation for all of you for coming. It is, you know, you may get, hopefully you're not getting bored, but it's very important that we hear from the riders, and I'm very month to do this. So thank you.
And thank you as well.
Thank you.
I didn't even go through a baseball.